got 5 brand new precons coming in Secrets of Strixhaven, one for each of the 5 schools in enemy color combinations, and each one continues the tradition of revitalizing what it means to play those 2 color combinations and give them a fresh coat of paint, including Lorehold Spirit, which continues the tradition of revitalizing the red-white color combination for recursion as opposed to just combat tricks. So how well does the Lorehold Spirit precon do? How well does it hold up against the others, and what can we do to upgrade it? The Lorehold Spirit precon is a precon divided, as many precons seem to be. Half of the deck focuses on graveyards, discarding cards, exiling cards from the graveyard, flashback, recursion, while the other half of the deck wants to be a more generic spirit-type deck with anthems that care about spirits in particular. Fortunately, the two halves don't make the deck feel like it's not meant to be played out of the box. In fact, since so much of Lorehold is focused on creating spirits by having cards leave your graveyard, it functions relatively seamlessly. And many of the deck's new cards straddle this line. They are spirits, and they either care about exiling from the graveyard, or they themselves exile cards from the graveyard. That's why this deck works. It manages to do both at the same time. That's a lesson a lot of precon designs can learn from. Do both things you want a precon to do, and use the new cards to establish that overlap. The reprints in the list are bangers as well, with multiple cards over $10, like Moonshaker Cavalry, Currency Converter, or Emeria the Sky Ruin. These are cards that are great staples, see a lot of play in other decks, and make this great to pick up for old and new cards alike. The default inclusions in the list just make sense as well. I actually found myself glad to see some cards I included in my original take on Quintorius in this list too, save for one notable card we'll talk about later. But yes, they include spirits, they include cards that make cards leave the graveyard, and in a lot of cases, the cards they chose do both things. Overall, the deck is concise and plays fantastically out of the box. No matter which direction you lean, getting extra value from replaying cards from the yard, or making an army of spirit tokens to overrun the table, the deck does it with 0 substitutions. Based on my ranking criteria for precons, Lorehold Spirit does this better than any other attempt at this color combination, while Osgir the Reconstructor from the original Strixhaven gave us a deck that cared about artifact recursion. This deck is more about spirits and spell recursion, something not before seen in this color combination. While the deck contains no infinite combos, which does limit its score, it does have routes to win apart from dealing combat damage, which is always nice to have in a precon. And the new cards are just good value in a lot of decks, and I can think of several that will be home in existing brews under other commanders. Overall, the Lorehold Spirit precon gets an A score from me. It plays well against a lot of precons from other sets, and even does well against other player-made brews. With no infinite combos, it may struggle to close out a stalled game the longer a game runs, but that can be said about just about any precon. This scores high, and is definitely recommended as a pickup. Let's dig a little deeper into the new commanders packed in the box. Quintorius' 4th appearance, this time as the History Chaser, and Excava the Risen Past. Let's first look at Quintorius History Chaser, the only planeswalker as commander in this entire cycle of Strixhaven precons. It's great to see Quint back, still doing the things he's always done. He is a 4-mana, 5-loyalty planeswalker that says, whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. This is a static ability, folks, it just happens, which is awesome. There are lots of ways to exploit it, for sure. His +1 ability says you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards, then mill a card. This is a spell that we've seen a dozen times before, but this time as a loyalty ability. And his -4 ability says spirits you control gain double strike and vigilance until end of turn, a fantastic overrun style ability. So on this commander alone, you can see the overlap in synergies between the two strategies of graveyard synergies and spirit type. Quintorius rewards you for having cards leave your graveyard, enables you to get cards into your graveyard, then also makes and buffs spirits. No wonder he's at the lead of this deck. He's got thesis statement written all over him. And that static ability is exploitable. There are lots of easy ways to turn this into a lot of creatures all at once. Effects that replace cards being discarded, for instance like Containment Construct and Currency Converter, both in this default list, create individual triggers no matter how many cards you discard at once. This means if you wheel, which is also printed in this deck in a roundabout way, you get to create a spirit token for each card you discarded. It works the same way as the original printing of Quintorius, except he's a mana cheaper and, unfortunately, easier to remove, which is still very good. Oh, right, then he buffs them with Double Strike and Vigilance as well. Immediately the best Planeswalker in this color combo. But our elephant friend isn't alone, he's joined by the new Excava the Risen Past. This 4-mana 3/3 Spirit Horse has flying and haste, and says, whenever Excava attacks, return up to one target artifact, creature, or non-aura enchantment with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. It's a 1/1 spirit creature with flying in addition to all of its other types. As a reminder, a finality counter means you exile the permanent with the counter on it instead of it dying. So Excava is basically a 4-mana Sun Titan, which is also in this base list, that brings things back as 1/1 flying spirits. This is incredibly good because you can blink that creature and it'll return as its base self for 0 loss whatsoever. There are also ways to remove counters from permanents that save them from being final as well. This does it faster, better, and stronger than anything else. Having a Sun Titan in the command zone can lead to a ton of interesting plays, annoying recursion, and fun things in a color combination that's usually known for just attacking. I said it before and I'll say it again, Lorehold brings a different approach to red and white that we should be seeing outside of just the plane of Strixhaven. For the sake of this deck, both commanders do things we want to do, recur cards from our graveyard and make spirits. However, I feel Quintorius does it better, making bigger spirits, making them better attackers, and importantly being able to do it more frequently. If you're playing or upgrading this Precon, Quintorius is the clear best choice to lead it. When I finally sat down to edit the deck and look for cards to cut for upgrades, I faced a real challenge. Playing the deck a few times, it was incredibly consistent. There's enough enablers and payoff cards that finding cuts was challenging. Everything played a role, and there were 2 halves to this deck, recursion and spirits, but they complemented each other thanks to the card selection and the new cards printed specifically for this deck. So I decided that leaning the deck away from the more combat-heavy elements, being the anthems and spirit pumping cards, was really the best, most efficient way to go. Instead, I wanted the deck to naturally create a bunch of spirits that also deal passive damage at the same time. Since we lack an infinite combo in the deck, I at least wanted to ensure it's easier to deal non-combat damage reliably by just doing what the deck wants to do. Patchwork Banner, Hoffrey Ghostforge, and Balefire Liege all got cut. Not that they aren't good, they are, and Hoffrey makes a great commander on his own, but the spirit pumping effects aren't really what we're looking for here, and Hoffrey would be a better include if we had more ways to sacrifice our own creatures, which is a whole nother can of worms. I also cut the new Vanguard of the Restless from the deck too, which it's good, and like I mentioned, cares about both spirits and recursion from the graveyard. Ideally though, we're only casting our commander once during the game. You're really counting on his ceiling, more and more pump for your spirits, being contingent on your commander being removed multiple times. I would rather bet on winning rather than losing, thank you very much. Fateful Tempest was another cut, another new card in the deck, largely because you're never really going to get the best Christmas land scenario from it. By voting for past or present, you either mill and deal damage to each opponent, or you get some impulse draw. And there is no world where any opponent will vote past and let you mill and deal them damage. They'll just all opt for you to impulse draw. So you can vote for past and get 3 present votes, which is the way that this will always go. Unless your deck is set up to flip a Draco to this, you'll deal a few damage, maybe, and cast maybe 1 or 2 of the impulse drawn cards. It's not worth a spot in the deck that's not aiming to flip something big. Though in a deck built around that effect, this one does work. And there are scant few inclusions in the deck that don't do either spirits or recursion that can be cut for the sake of making the deck more streamlined. For instance, Bitterthorn really does nothing for us apart from is an artifact that can be recurred. It's one of the better reprints for the deck, but it's better in a deck that wants its benefits and can exploit it more. This deck does much better things for 3 mana, and even when it's a free 1/1 that ramps us every turn, we've got better options. The new Lorehold Activist gets cut too, since in the end it costs 7 mana to do anything we want for this deck, namely recur something from the graveyard. Sure, this can happen across multiple turns and can happen multiple times, but you're taking multiple turns off to do it. We can do that cheaper and easier with cards already in the list. This is just too clunky unless we're dedicating entire turns to just activating this card. Lastly, I've cut Secret Rendezvous, Remorseful Cleric, and Quintorius Loremaster. Rendezvous is bad card draw. Please stop playing it and please stop putting it in precons, wizards. Remorseful Cleric may exile a graveyard and may be a spirit, but we do not want to be exiling our graveyard all at once. Many of our effects say when 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, and this hits all of them at once. Sure, it may be nice to get an opponent doing some recursion tricks, but here, I don't think it's necessary. And lastly, Quintorius Loremaster does what we want, but does it slower than any other version of Quintorius. Unlike his uncommon version or the new Planeswalker version, he only triggers once per turn, which isn't as good or exploitable as the ones we're keeping in this list. So, if those were all cut, what was added in? Well, mostly I wanted more consistency and more options. I wanted to be able to discard better, exile from the graveyard better, and make more and more tokens rather than make my tokens better. So, the first add was Bag of Holding. Bag of Holding should have been in the base list without exception, and should be the first card added for any and all upgrades to this deck. As I mentioned, effects like Containment Construct, Currency Converter, and Bag of Holding create scenarios where, by discarding a card, you create a trigger to exile it from your graveyard, and it can trigger on any and all of your cards leave the graveyard effects. The benefit being, if you discard multiple cards at once, this creates individual triggers for each of those discards. If you discard 7 cards, 7 individual exile this card from your graveyard triggers occur, which trigger all of your 1 or more effects each time. It's an interaction that turns Quintorius from make a token each turn to make multiple tokens each turn, and is a must-have for redundancy's sake. Now the next card added was Ghost Vacuum, one of the benefits being that it's 1 mana, works every turn, and can get all of the creatures you exile with it back under your control later in the game, as spirits. Again, working with everything the deck wants to do, and acting as both early and late game enabler for all game plans. Then also along these lines is Lion Sash. It's another cheap and easy way to trigger your leaves a graveyard effects multiple times, and even doing it on opponents' turns for surprise blockers, or to untap with spirits that are no longer summoning sick. By attaching it to an evasive attacker, of which this deck has many, it's also a valid way to swing in for a lot of damage reliably. Trove Warden also makes a great include because, like Ghost Vacuum, the cards we exile from our graveyard aren't gone forever. We can set ourselves up to be exiling small permanents from our graveyard on landfall, triggering our leaves the graveyard effects, then when the Warden dies, blammo, we get them all back. It's a win-win kind of card for us. To help advance our game plan with all of this, I've added in Fuming Effigy. For each card that leaves our graveyard, we can deal a damage to each opponent. This can be extremely strong when we're recurring or exiling 3 to 4 cards each turn from our own graveyard. For a common, this guy is a house, and you can bet your opponents will need to use removal on him or perish. The new Arc of Hunger makes a great include too, since it has the same line of text on it, but now also gaining you a life. That's all upside. But then it also allows you to mill yourself each turn and play the milled card. Payoff and enabler all in one. Recognize these cards because they're always good. This lets you play lands milled with it too, not just cast spells. Again, all upside. Then another new card, Hardened Academic. From Secrets of Strixhaven, this flying, evasive bird does two important things we want. One, he pumps our creatures whenever one or more cards leave the graveyard. We're doing that, so let's benefit from it even more by pumping our other evasive creatures. But maybe most importantly, it says, discard a card. What comes after the colon, giving it lifelink, doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's a free way to discard cards as many times as we want. This is very good, since it can trigger our exile when discarding effects whenever we want, as many times as we're able. Second, we have a Wheel of Fortune on a stick in the deck that wants someone to have minimal cards in hand. If we can control this, we can be wheeling on each of our turns, making tons of spirits to attack with thanks to Quintorius. This is actually very good and very crucial for this deck. Then one of my favorite mini wheel creatures, Anye's Ravager, gets included in my list. On attack, we get to discard our hand and draw 3 cards. In a deck that wants to be dumping cards into the yard, this is fantastic, and gives us fodder each turn to exile from our yard or bring back to play. An underrated gem in my opinion, especially when we have ways to reliably cast it for its madness cost at a discount. And lastly, 2 adds that make us more creatures. The first being Summoner's Sending. This one is a sleek 2-mana enchantment that lets us exile a creature from any graveyard at the end of our turns. When we do, we make a 1/1 flying spirit creature token. And if the creature we've exiled is mana value 4 or greater, we put a counter on that spirit. It's simple, sure, but it's a way to reliably trigger our effects and reliably make even more spirits. But the final one is Redundancy for Quintorius' ability, On Wings of Gold. A 4-mana enchantment, it gives all of our tokens +1/+1 and flying. Much better than just a +1/+1 bonus. The evasion is so good. But it also has a version of Quintorius' ability. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 white zombie creature token. Thanks to that first line, this becomes a 2/2 flying zombie that we can make whenever we do the thing we're already doing. Easy enough and just pennies to pick up. But with those additions, I've really avoided some of the more expensive cards that give us good, strong effects. I would love to include damage on enters effects like Impact Tremors or Perforos or Slash Rampaging Reptile in the list, but then the deck is focusing even less on recursion and more on just making tokens. Part of the charm of the deck is the longevity that you get from recursion elements, and that's something I wanted to maintain in my upgrade. If you want to lean the deck in that way, I think there's also many ways to include token doublers like Mondrak, Anointed Procession, and O'Hare Talk. But again, then you're less about recursion and more about just making tokens, and that's a theme that, in my opinion, has been done to death. Including those cards would mean slashing recursion engines like Sun Titan, Sarah Paragon, and Karmic Guide. It would mean losing some of the premium effects that want cards to leave your graveyard over and over and focus on just beelining Quintorius plus bag plus wheel, which loses some soul. Ao, Teshar, and Atsushi would all be cut, and at that point you're losing a lot of the real heart and soul of the deck, the reanimation engines and recursion engines. If you want that angle, just a powerful deck, go for it. The option is there. But if you're looking for a real Lorehold state of mind, skip those expensive generic pieces. Honestly, I can't say enough good things about this Precon. Lorehold Spirit rates very highly and stands toe-to-toe with a lot of the best Precons out there. It's a recommendation from me without a doubt. But I want to hear from you. How do you feel about the Lorehold Spirit, and did you upgrade it? Let me know in the comments along with which Strixhaven Precon you are most looking forward to. And don't leave without checking out my sponsors like Card Conduit. They are hands down the easiest way to sell your individual Magic cards without the hassle of traditional buy listing. They'll get you top dollar while handling all of the heavy lifting, from sorting to grading to optimizing your price across a huge network of vendors. And they'll give you cold hard cash for it. You can use the promo code MECHANIC right now for 10% off of all fees. And if you want to pick up the cards for this list, make sure to go check out Card Trader. Use my promo code MECHANIC right now for 5% off your order from any TCG. Card Trader's zero system means you can get cards from all over the world with only one shipping fee. Save money and time today. Lastly, you can check out all of my decks on MOXFIELD. MOXFIELD is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to build decks and search for specific cards with their powerful tools. Have you checked out their drag and drop feature yet? It's revolutionary. Be sure to check out my brews and follow my profile there right now. If you were inspired to brew today, you have to hit that subscribe button. Check out this other deck on my channel right now for more sweet tech. And as always folks, good luck and have fun.